So you're telling me it's a coincidence that the Love's car won on Valentine's Day? Are you kidding me?
Oh, I didn't even mention that.
Yeah. What's up, everybody, and welcome back to the DK Garage. I'm Jeremy.
And I'm Joe.
Joe, let them know what we discussed today.
Well, we started by recapping the 2021 Daytona 500 and then went into detail about the road course where we're at this week.
Yeah, man, we went pretty deep with the stats on this one. Get you guys ready for race day. I know you're excited. So many good plays this week. It's so hard to decide which guys to put in the lineup because there's so many that are worth putting in there.
Yeah, and we cover it all in this episode and in our digital magazine, The Race Guide. So let's get this show on the road.
Well, that was a fun race.
Daytona 500, man.
Yep. Couldn't expect really anything different. We knew that the third place car, whoever it was, going into turn 3 was probably going to win. We just didn't expect it to be Michael McDowell.
Not anything crazy to expect. You knew Michael McDowell would have the ride to be in a position to take that opportunity and turn it into a win, but he's tried how many times before and hadn't had success. This was the first
career win.
That's huge for someone. Coming at Daytona, it's you can't get more special than that.
Well, and plus, you got to factor in the payout that this is going to do for the team. So moving forward, they're setting up nice.
Sponsor opportunities. You can just keep on going down the list of what doors open because you're a Daytona 500 winner.
And you also got to think that Alfredo's going to benefit a little bit from this too because of the team getting that nice check. So crazy race. What was your take on the whole Brad Keselowski and Joey Logano?
Yeah, they're teammates.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's what threw the whole thing into a frenzy is whenever you see two teammates battling out for a win. It's really hard to tell what exactly had happened there at the end when they were battling first and second. It's the last couple turns there, so you're looking to score a Daytona 500 win. You can't do anything except for try, right? So it's unfortunate, but Michael McDowell was in the right place at the right time, and he capitalized.
He sure did. And because of the way that he impacted and Kyle Busch slammed into him and caused that fireball, going back to last year with Newman, NASCAR had to throw the yellow flag. They had to just for driver safety. But man, if they had let that run, Chase was in position to get his first 500, and Hamlin was still in position to get his third in a row.
That would have been wild if they would have let that thing run. But I'm so happy for Michael McDowell. You couldn't ask for a better guy to win a 500. Finally, get that on his resume, a win on his resume in the series. So, it'd been great to see Chase Elliott or Denny Hamlin win for. There's so many storylines, but people don't understand, in my opinion, how good of a racer Michael McDowell is. You heard in the broadcast how.
Jeff Gordon?
No, not Jeff Gordon.
Oh,
Clint Boyer.
Yep,
Clint
new guy.
Yeah, Clint
Rookie.
Boyer. Yeah, you put a rookie in the boot, Clint Boyer.
Yeah.
But he had alluded to his experiences at Daytona previously and seeing Michael McDowell there in the top 5 and just you didn't expect to see him actually win the race after he had just discussed it, but you knew going into it he was a contender, and he's a contender going into the Daytona road course where we're at this week. We're sticking in Daytona, and we're racing the road course. So we got a little bit of a taste of it with the Clash. Now Michael McDowell is starting second behind Chase, or next to Chase Elliott, I should say, heading into this event. So there's going to be a lot of stuff to talk about just with this race specifically.
A lot of storylines. And the reason why there's so many storylines, we gotta touch on this. The 500, lap 15, so many cars got taken out of the race. Big name players. And that means because there's no qualifying for this race, because of that, they're doing the same thing they did last year, the calculation.
All the
formula.
All
So
the
Chase
parameters.
Elliott, like you said, is on the pole, but you have guys like Eric Jones, who was running top I looked at, I think it was 14th at the time of that wreck at lap 15, and he started further back. One of our favorite plays of the week was looking great. He was looking fast. He was making good moves, all that stuff. Got collected up in other people's messes, and he's starting 37th this week.
Yeah, it's super speedway action. And with the dynamic that's being played with the way that they're going back to the 2020 setting and starting the field with the parameters based on previous finishing position and all the different dynamics that are shaping up that algorithm that allows for them to set that starting grid, you get guys that have great opportunities to have place differential that didn't quite finish well enough to make an impact in the Daytona 500, but are in a position this week to really pay off in value.
Yeah, that's why I'm bringing it up. Because, just to kind of set the scene, why are these guys who are so good, Blaney starting 28th, Reddick starting 26th, Byron starting 24th. These are some Bowman starting 36th. These are guys who not only are just good drivers of the sport in general, they're solid road course drivers, and they're also solid here.
Yeah, and you've seen the action with the clash, which we got to see leading up to the Daytona 500, and saw guys that are starting in the back, like Martin Truex, starting towards the rear, actually leading that event. So there's a lot of guys sprinkled throughout that you would typically see towards the front if we had qualifying events and things of that nature that were in a typical race leading up to, or typical week leading up to the race. You would see those guys kind of probably be towards the front.
Last year, their race was, I forget the exact mileage, but there was 65 laps. Now we have 70 laps. So we have a few extra laps to contend with, but that's not a ton of laps when you start to look at it from a DK perspective, fastest laps and laps led. So there's only 49 points up for grabs, and that's not including the cautions, which are going to take a few of those fastest laps away.
And when you say 49 points, you're talking about potential performance points, and performance points is what we refer to them as. Some people refer to them as dominator points, but we really think that this is a metric that's based on performance because you're talking about laps led, and you're talking about place differential, laps led and fastest laps.
Yeah.
So you're looking at two guys that are, or two categories that are really strictly performance based. So with those metrics, you don't really see a lot based on a short lap or a short race that only has 70 laps. So it's not really like at a Martinsville or a short track like race that you see a lot of laps led and that there's a fastest lap available 500 times. So
right.
This one, you're not looking necessarily for that as a key metric whenever you're taking into consideration these drivers.
And this is also, I believe, miles-wise, the longest length that they run, 3.61 miles. So this is a track, if you have an issue, you can come into the pits, you can change all four tires, you can fill it with fuel, you can get back on the track, and you're fine.
Yeah, and we're going to see some...
you won't lose a lap, I should say.
And we're going to see some action potentially if it does rain like we saw that delayed us at Daytona during the Daytona 500 event. Rain's not going to be as impactful here. Sure, if it gets crazy and there's a downpour and lightning and all that, they'll red flag it. But they have the setup and capacity in the Cup Series to run with the rain tires now. So we could see that specifically.
You really got to take a second to really think about what you just said too. The Cup Series may potentially run a race in the rain, something that delays races for hours, just like it did last week. That will change strategy, and that's something that is very hard to account for when you're constructing your lineups. You don't know exactly what the weather's going to do. You don't know. None of these guys have ever raced in the rain, except for, if I know it's going to rain for sure, I'm probably going to lock in Chase Briscoe because I know he has experience. Maybe someone like Christopher Bell. I think he probably does in Xfinity as well. But that's something, if you're building lineups, coming up to lock, you really need to be paying attention this week more than ever to the weather.
Yeah, the weather's going to be impactful, and also just road courses in general these guys are only used to racing 2 or 3 events a year. This year they've got 7. So the road courses come early and they come often in 2021.
Mm-hmm.
And so these guys are really going to learn from each and every event. And to be able to come out of the hauler ready to go will be really, really hard to do. And I think we'll see some of the guys that will potentially benefit from this early on and build off of it for the rest of the year.
All right, so I think we need to get into drivers a little bit. We need to start getting to some of the good stuff.
The meat and potatoes.
Yeah, so up at the top, Martin Truex Jr. comes in 11,000, and he's starting 19th. How are you approaching Martin Truex this week?
Well, he's still starting 19th, being $11,000. He's the highest paid guy. But you look at his ability on the road course, and next to Chase Elliott, I don't know if there's a better road course driver, in my opinion. And I see that he has a really good chance to reach value if he's able to get a couple fastest laps and potentially get a top 5 finish. He's there easily. So it's something that I'm going to have some pretty good exposure to Martin Truex. And in my opinion, compared to where Chase Elliott is, just $300 more starting on at the pole position, I'm going to have more exposure to Truex than I will Elliott.
Okay. Chase Elliott, like you mentioned, comes in $300 cheaper, but he has won, and correct me if I'm wrong, 4 road courses in a row.
Well, yeah, when you know the facts, he's a great road course winner, racer.
But he's starting first. Last year he started 7th, and he did make the optimal lineup. That's important to point out. This year he's starting first, so no point differential upside, only downside there. But he's up front, so he can lead a lot of laps.
He can also get some really quick laps being out that there's no traffic in front of him, too.
Of course. Now, one of the things that we identified when we were building our projections, we realized it was Chase Elliott, if he does what he did last year, or even does better, he's a solid play. Cash lineups, sure, go for it. But he has a hard time, and I think it's going to be a very hard time for him to make the optimal this year, even if he leads almost every lap.
Well, it's that pole position. You don't have any ability to make up any positions, and it's only negative PD at that point. So any single time that you're getting passed on the racetrack is negative points to your DraftKings lineup, and it's one of those deals where we look at him and we expect him to be out front and lead a lot of laps and whatnot, but there's risk involved there. And somebody that's right below him is his best bud, and Ryan Blaney starting 27th.
Yeah, he is was really good here in the Clash.
They battled for the win basically going into that last chicane.
They were right there, and I mean, to be honest, Chase, he doored him. You want him to go for the win. You can't be mad at it. Yep. Hopefully we don't see something like that again in a points-paying race, that won't look good on their part, and give it to someone like Kyle Busch or Hamlin or something like that. But he's strong, and, we have him in our projections finishing a pretty modest 11th, and he's still hitting. His value is projected a little bit higher than Chase Elliott.
He has so much potential. He's one of those guys that I'm going to have a lot of exposure to, just because we've seen what he's been able to do, and with him starting in 27th because of the Daytona 500, to me, it's a shoo-in. I really like him a lot going into this weekend.
Yeah, he's going to be a favorite play. Now, I do need to point out, though, he was in a juicy spot last year at this race, starting 24th. I think he was 11,000, and basically Truex numbers this year, but a little further back, so a little bit better PD. And I think he actually finished a little worse than that. I don't remember his exact finishing spot, but either way, he did not pan out. Really hurt a lot of my lineups because I went heavy on Blaney. So I would say there's a little bit of risk there too with some of these PD plays. But if you're talking about guys in our
keep in mind
place differential pool, where would you kind of rank him with this price tag? Are you going to be high on him, or are you going to be looking elsewhere, like 10-2, starting 34th, AJ Allmendinger.
And not a lot of people that are casual DraftKings fans will know even who AJ Allmendinger is. I don't even think most casual NASCAR fans know who he is. And he's somebody that's conquered road courses. He's a great racer. If you know anything about the sport, you've really followed his career and seen him be competitive, especially in the college setup. I think it's really made him relevant. I'm excited to see him, and especially starting where he is. There's a lot of potential there, and I really think that I will have, being that he's starting 34th, more exposure with his price tag than Ryan Blaney.
Yeah, and especially if it rains, because he has experience in the rain in the Xfinity race or Xfinity series just last year, and he was always up front. Sometimes he got a little aggressive and got put out, but he's a guy. Both Blaney and Allmendinger are going to be contenders, I believe, in this one. But to me, the edge has to go to Allmendinger because they have nothing to lose. Blaney, there's a good chance he tries to play a little safe, collect some points. He didn't have a good finish at the 500. You don't want to get too far behind. Allmendinger's only going for the win. So they can be more aggressive with their pit strategy. So you get a little salary relief, basically the same play, but you get 7 place differential.
And that's really big whenever you're talking about a short race. That PD upside is bar none one of the things that you look at most whenever you're building the lineup. So I want to have really a lot of exposure to him, probably compared to some of the other drivers we're about to talk about. One of them being Kyle Busch, the next guy on our list, the Clash winner.
Mm-hmm. You got to put a little respect on him.
You do, but at the same time, you got to kind of tap the brake pedal a little bit because he is the worst driver in the field when it comes to place differential at road courses over the last 2 years with negative 15.4.
But some of those numbers, if you dive into it, you'll realize they are skewed because if you have an accident, an issue, and you start 25th and you end up finishing 30th, that's only negative 5 place differential. But if you start up start up front like 5th, like Kyle Busch, or in this case, 14th, but just as an example, where he normally starts, 5th, 6th, 7th on these type of tracks, he has an issue, tire blows out. We saw that happen last year. Things that can be out of his control that really will skew the data. But, he's a guy that he's pretty, in his past, he's been really strong at road courses, and we saw him a little luckily, but he pulled it out in the Clash.
He's one of those guys that's just a veteran driver that, in my opinion, that's going to find a way to position himself and be there whenever it matters, like we saw in the Clash. I don't want to continue to refer to that, but it's just prime Kyle Busch, and what I'm really expecting to see this entire season from Kyle Busch.
And he was aggressive last year. He was running up front for a good little part of the Daytona road course last year, competing with his teammate who is just below him in the price tag this week, Denny Hamlin. So he has shown, unlike the Charlotte Roval, where he has not put up good numbers at all, but he's put up good numbers at Sonoma and at Watkins Glen, and he's shown that he can run good laps here too.
Yeah, and you bring up Denny Hamlin. He's in that next tier, starting out the $9,000 price range at $9,800, but he's starting in 4th. So it's going to be really hard, in my opinion, for him to reach value. But being that he's up there towards the front to get things underway, he could get some laps led there.
He led a lot of laps last year, and he also finished 2nd last year, and he was right on Chase Elliott's tail. So, some pit strategy comes up. Maybe Chase Elliott has a little bit of issue. As far as the guy who might be the next best shot to win other than Chase in a good position, you got to think Denny Hamlin's up there. 4th. He's starting a little bit on the outside, but he also looked good in the Clash too. So he's going to have speed. So, in my opinion, Denny Hamlin's, if you're looking for guys to put in your lineup starting up front, he's got to be up there.
Yeah, I would much rather have him than the guy that's right below him and Brad Keselowski at $9,600. Sure, he's starting 15th, Brad K, that is. But it's just going to be a lot harder for him to reach value if he's not leading laps, if he's really stuck in traffic. I'm really not seeing a huge advantage there for him, and I'd much rather have a Denny Hamlin in that situation.
Yeah, and he doesn't have to do nearly as much as what Chase does to really pay off. And with some of the PD plays that we're talking about, Hamlin might be the next logical choice because Brad Keselowski and Joey Logano, they're very similar in price, very similar starting spots. If you're having me pick between one of the two, in that case, I'm going to go with Logano because he finished third here, I think, in the Clash. He's been fast, and he's got a little bit better starting position. But to be honest, I'm not really a big fan of either of those plays. How are you feeling about Brad and Joey?
Well, with Joey and Brad's history recently at Daytona, finishing up the last lap there, it's going to be interesting to see how things shape up. But I
know the drama is there, and I know they're going to build it up for TV, and people are going to talk about it on Twitter. But these are Penske drivers. This isn't, Denny Hamlin, Corey LaJoie, where Corey LaJoie doesn't really have much to lose. He's just trying to kind of stick up for himself. I don't really know what Hamlin's doing in that situation. These are Penske guys. If there's an issue, they'll handle it internally. If there is another issue in the track, similar where Logano chops Brad, or at least Brad feels that he chops him, then we may see it escalate to the track. But I highly, highly doubt we see anything between Brad and Joey this week on the track. I mean, it would definitely be in a different track, not a road course.
Yeah, I don't really see it coming to light this week. So I think Logano just being sure he doesn't have the PD upside, he just has more consistency in my opinion. The ability to finish a little bit more consistent at road courses. So I like him a little bit more just because he's a couple $100, just a couple places different. I think he has the ability to get up front and maybe
tournament play for sure.
He's not anybody I'm looking at cash lineups at by any means, but I might sprinkle him in through some GPP lineups.
Right. So Harvick in a normal, even a normal road course, I'd be all over this number. $9,200 starting fifth. You know he's going to have speed. And if you start looking into his his road course statistics, especially the last 5, he's the 4th best driver as far as driver rating goes. But for whatever reason, this Daytona road course seems to really give him trouble. He did not look good in the Clash.
Yeah,
can't put too much into it, but because it's everyone's going for broke, but still. Last year, not a great result.
He didn't look comfortable here. For whatever reason, he's never looked comfortable here. And last year, he finished 17th, started on the pole, and he came into the race looking like he was a bat out of hell, ready to win and just dominate the entire season. And he stumbled here. And it was uncharacteristic last year. And to open up the season with the Clash, he just looked like he wasn't in his environment. I don't know why, but it just doesn't seem like it's something that fits his race style.
I might... Because it's Harvick, I might have to do a lineup with Harvick in there because this is a great number. You can fit a lot of great guys below him or around him in this lineup, but it's a tough play for me. I don't think I'm going to be using him too much.
Starting fifth is not really worth it, my opinion.
Especially when you look at the guy right below him, 9,000, and he's starting 36th.
Yeah, Alex Bowman. And when we saw the price tags come out with his place or where he's starting at and the PD upside and his track history here, and just I'm expecting quite a bit from Alex Bowman this year. And we were just rewatching the race and seeing that 48 car that we are expecting them to bring to the track being up there in the top. What was it, top
he
five?
He was running second real late, and then Hamlin and Truex got past him, so Jimmy finished 4th in this race, which he's not. I mean, I think Alex Bowman's already a much better road course racer than Jimmy Johnson was in his career, and Jimmy Johnson's one of the best all time. Road courses weren't his strong suit, but to finish 4th, Alex Bowman's got to be feeling pretty good, even though they're going to have to do some different pit strategy to make up some of this place differential. But with a crew chief like Greg Ives, I don't see there's very little risk here in this play.
Yeah, Alex Bowman started 27th in this race last year, finished 12th, and he's not even in the setup that we're expecting him to have this go around. So we're looking for quite a bit out of him, especially with the disappointment that Daytona opened up with. We were thinking him starting on the pole would lend to him having some ability to get kind of a fire started under him early, and it just didn't really pan out that he was kind of caught up in that early wreck.
Even if he just hits his average finish of 10th in the last 5 at road courses, that's huge upside.
Yeah, and that's where we have him projected at. So just with base projections, we've got him reaching almost 7x, starting 36. That's just where you're looking at some of these guys and being able to reach value easily. The guy right below him, his teammate William Byron, starting 22nd. Very similar situation, in my opinion. What do you think?
I actually really like Byron, and I didn't when we were first getting into the stats. Byron's just one of those tough guys every week. Just where they price him, he's very hard to use because he always offers some upside, and if he hits, it's a home run. But his averages, it's tough to play him consistently. But here, starting 22nd, 8,800, not a steep price. I mean, that's about his price tag. But I didn't realize this. In the last 5 races on road courses, he's sorted by driver rating. He's the 3rd best driver. And so that means Chase Elliott, Martin Truex, and then William Byron.
And that was really surprising whenever you start going through the data, and specifically at road courses. In 2021, we're going to have a lot of road courses. So I'm super excited to see this stuff early on and see what kind of information we're able to gather from these races and see if these last few races that we've gotten to see throughout the last couple of years really pan out with those metrics.
I don't, when we did our projection or predictions per race, I didn't have Byron winning a race. I think you had him winning one. But I do expect William Byron to take a big step forward this year and us to start noticing him more in the races. Is he going to be competing for wins? You'll see him here and there. But I think he's going to be starting to contend for top 10s very consistently. And you're going to have to really start considering him when you build your lineups because he's starting to really get, in my opinion, he's starting to really get this thing dialed in.
Yeah, and so we go down to the $8,600 price range, and 2 guys starting 17th and 18th, and then Chase Briscoe being $8,400. These are 2 guys that are very similar in starting positions, salary. Is there what sticks out between these 2 drivers to you?
Kurt Busch is actually 10th best in the last 5 on road courses by driver rating. But I'm not a huge fan. I'll see kind of what the optimizer spits out. I may have a little bit more exposure than I'm anticipating, but if I'm manually building lineups, I'm probably going Chase Briscoe over Kurt Busch just because he's shown in Xfinity to be pretty dominant. And also he's a name that most people don't know, so I think he'll carry a little lower ownership if we're just kind of comparing just Kurt Busch and Chase Briscoe.
Yeah, and those 2 guys I'm not going to have a ton of exposure to. There's more guys further down in the field that we're going to be getting to that I think have a lot more value to offer. Kyle Larson at $8,300 starting 8th is not one of those guys at all. I'm really not seeing very much upside in his situation this week.
It's tough. When we went through our projections, Kyle Larson, we weren't too favorable, and I do think that that's still probably likely. But then when I dove into the last 5 races, now Kyle Larson did not race any road courses last year. He was suspended before they raced at any. So his is the last 3, so from 2019. He was, by driver rating, the 7th best driver, which surprised me because when you watch these races, you don't really hear Kyle Larson's name mentioned very much, but just shows you the talent that he does have. I think even if he gets a solid top 10, it's not going to be worth the money, so I won't have too much exposure to Larson. But he is, in my opinion, he's still one of those guys up front that he could hit. If he finishes, fourth, get some fastest laps, that's pretty good.
Yeah, it is, but it's really risky. And starting there at 8th position, there's just a lot of things that have to align for him to really hit value.
But you know what? We kind of said that same thing last week about him at the Daytona 500, and he finished 4th or 5th or something like that. So I don't know. It's a tough one. As we've kind of progressed through this, I'm liking Larson a little bit more. But I mean, if you're just, like I said, hand building lineups, it's going to be hard to play Larson over a guy like Matty D starting right below him, 32 at $8,100.
Yeah, he closed it off the price range in the $8,000 range at $8,100, starting 32nd. He's definitely somebody I want to look at because it's really hard to find someone with the talent that Matty D has. And it's not necessarily the talent at road courses. He just knows how to drive the car that he's given and make something with it. And he has some road course success, not a win by any means, but he knows how to put that car into a situation to get the most out of it.
But he's just so low risk. I mean, the chances of him finishing, outside the top 30, I would say are slim to none. It's NASCAR, so anything can happen. You can blow a tire out, first lap and get a couple laps down early, if he has some damage or something like that. But if he's able to stay clean, top 20 seems very likely, and top 15, I'd say, seems really likely. With starting 32nd, you got to have exposure to Matty D this week.
Yeah, and he's finished 15th in this race last year, so that is definitely doable. So it's one of those deals where we've got him in our projections not too far out, just finishing 14th, and he's reached almost 6x in value. So It doesn't take a lot for someone starting that far back with the ability of someone like Matty D to be able to put that car in a situation to make it reach value pretty easily.
In my opinion, one of the toughest drivers to really nail this week, just given what we have to work with from the DraftKings side of it, Eric Almirola, 7,900, starting 26th. He's well known, so I think he will carry some ownership. I'm wondering how much he's going to carry, because that is very solid PD upside starting 26th. But he also struggled here at Daytona and other road courses.
Yeah, he's just not shown the ability on road courses, in my opinion, to really feel comfortable rostering him. Like we've talked about multiple times with some of the drivers above him, and we'll talk about below him, that just seem to find a knack at road courses to finish strong. He just doesn't seem to get there. He's got a negative 3.4 place differential as an average. So there's some road courses that he's really struggled at. Someone that I'm really not looking to roster very much, just because it's going to take a little bit more for him to reach value.
But do you feel like he can hit top 20?
I could see him finishing in the top 20, maybe 16th, somewhere in there. I think that's kind of where we've got him projected. He could reach a top 12 and get 5x, but I really think he's going to be somewhere in that 4.5 to 4.75 in value. And I don't know if he's necessarily somebody that's going to pay.
What kind of ownership do you think he could carry in tournaments?
In tournaments, he might be somebody that's not really that owned. So you could take a risk, or take a little bit more risk there and be a little bit different.
So one of my favorite plays last week that unfortunately,
he was one of my favorite plays as well.
I'm sure he was a lot of people's favorite plays, so they know where I'm going to go with this. But Eric Jones is in another fantastic spot at this road course, 7,800, starting 37th.
I'm going to have probably too much Eric Jones, unfortunately, just because he's starting 37th. It doesn't take very much starting that far back in the field, and with the ability of somebody like Eric Jones, we're talking about a guy that's a top 12 driver when you're looking at driver rating, and then there's some other metrics that we've looked at that projects him as a top 10 driver in a road course environment.
Yeah, I mean, he was because one of the things that people were going to worry about, and it's a valid argument, is, well, he's in slightly less equipment. He's going from the 20 Joe Gibbs equipment to Richard Petty Racing 43, iconic car. But he was also top 15 when he got caught up in that wreck last week. And he started, I don't remember exactly where, but I think it was around the 30th or something like that. So he started far back there, and he had made his way up early. And again, a totally different track. You can't compare the road course to Daytona. But to me, that just shows me early that he's already comfortable in this car, and he's better than a 37th place car. And so he's got massive upside, in my opinion, this week.
Well, and last week and this week are completely different scenarios than an oval race. So you don't have to necessarily have the best car. You are looking at drivers that have the experience. And in my opinion, Eric Jones is an old school driver that can take a piece of who knows what and put it in a situation to get a top 10, to get a win. So I'm looking for big things from Eric Jones this season, and this race lends itself early on for them to be able to get have some success potentially.
It won't surprise me if he is the highest owned driver in some of these tournaments, just because of that PD upside. It'll be interesting to see how that unfolds. But the guy who's in his old car from last year, Christopher Bell, starts 12th, 7,700. Pretty decent road course racer, at least in the Xfinity series. But I feel like he's in a little bit of a tough spot this week.
Yeah, starting 12th, it's difficult. He is a decent road course driver. Not somebody I'm looking for a lot out of this week. I'd rather take a little bit of a risk with some guys down the slate a little bit. Even Tyler Reddick, another rookie from last year at 7,500, starting 24th. He's not somebody that's been tremendously strong at road courses. We don't have him projected super high. Just somebody.
But to be fair, he finished fourth in the Clash.
He did finish fourth in the Clash, and he showed some showed an ability to be where he needed to be at the end. And he's one of those guys that we're looking at that early to see if he's able to put himself in a position to win, and we're expecting him to. So he could reach a little bit better value than what we have him projected at, but he's still somebody I'm cautioning a little bit.
Yeah, if it comes down in that price range between Christopher Bell, Tyler Reddick, and even if you include Newman, who has some great upside, I'm probably going to throw my money a little bit more towards Reddick, but I think Christopher Bell's a tough play. I think most people are going to pivot to Reddick or Ryan Newman.
Well, you say Newman, and I'm going to go to somebody that's in that same tier at $7,200, and that's Chris Buescher starting 30th. So you mentioned Newman starting 33rd. He's a pretty good road course racer, but Chris Buescher continues to find his way into the discussion when we're talking about road course races. And starting 30th, he's got a really good chance of paying off that price tag and finding a lot of value.
Well, last year he started 21st and he finished 5th. Now, much tougher spot starting 30th, but he is one of our top projected guys as far as value goes, because he is, like you said, finds a way up front, at least at this road course. For whatever reason, it seems to really work with him, click with him. So, yeah, if you're comparing all four of those guys, Chris Buescher is going to win out for sure. But Buescher, Reddick, those are going to be my top kind of plays. A sneaky play might be the guy right in that same kind of grouping in Cole Custer, who has really come on. He had one bad race early, I think it was. It might have even been here because he doesn't have a ton of road course experience, but he's starting 13th. What do you think?
He surprised me at Daytona, coming out strong. Didn't have the best finish, but he still surprised me that he was able to hang around, keep the car clean. And he's somebody that we're looking at in that Stewart-Haas equipment, that he's supposed to know what to do. He's supposed to be a professional, and I'm looking at him to be able to take that next step this year. And we'll see what happens when it comes to road courses. It's early. See if he has the ability to put that car where it needs to be at the end.
So with his potential PD upside, if you're getting stuck kind of in this range, you going to go Custer or you going to go Mr. Daytona 500 winner Michael McDowell starting second, but who has good road course numbers at $6,800?
You're right. He's one of those guys that if he wasn't starting second, I'd be all over at a road course. He's consistent. He's one of those drivers that you're used to seeing in a position to be able to not necessarily win, but have a solid finish. And starting second after winning the Daytona 500 is going to be hard to follow up that. I'm going to probably kind of tap the brakes a little bit, not have too much exposure. He might have a top 10, most likely a little bit further back, in my opinion.
Yeah, if he can get up front, he's a guy that can stay up front. He can be very difficult to pass, but that's a tough play for me. Austin Dillon right below him starting third, 6,700. He did not race this race last year. It was Kaz Grala, and he got, what was it, seventh. He started 10th, finished 7th. But Dillon's not the best at road courses. Could be a nice low ownership play. What do you think?
Oh, man. Starting third, he's already risky as it is in most environments. It's just too risky. I don't see him being able to reach value easily. I'm sure he might get a top 12 finish or something along those lines, but it's still starting third. There's so much stuff that has to go right for you to reach the value point for that price tag. It's going to be too difficult, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think it's one where maybe you build one or two lineups. Just kind of hope you build a little contrarian just in case something different happens. But that's a tough spot. If we're trying to go a little lower in price tag, save some money, I'm going to be going to guys like Anthony Alfredo, Daniel Suarez, even Ty Dillon.
And you mentioned
they're all starting in the 30s.
Yeah, exactly. You mentioned those last two, Daniel Suarez and Ty Dillon, starting 35th, 38. Those are the two that entice me the most. Both of them have experience on road courses. Both of them have experience at the Cup level, like we talked about a little bit earlier. That the car isn't necessarily the you don't have to have the most highest performing car to be able to perform at a road course, as long as the driver has the ability to put the car where it needs to be. Mm-hmm. And so I think Daniel Suarez and Ty Dillon, this really lends to their style of racing a little bit. So with the price tags being at $5,700 and $5,600, with them starting towards the rear of the field, in my opinion, those two guys are somebody they're going to have a lot of exposure.
That's pretty much going to be my basement, if you will. I'm going to have a hard time playing anybody below that price point. The only guy that I may consider, and this is going to be a contrarian play, would be Corey LaJoie, because he's only $5,000 and he is starting 7th, and he seems to be in better equipment this year. It seems like Spire is taking that next step forward. We'll see if it translates to road course. So it's I would say a high risk, high reward play, because you get him at 5,000, you can have every place differential play on the board, and you don't need him to do much to be worth it.
So I want to give you a couple more guys to dive down towards the basement. He gave you Corey LaJoie starting 7th, but J.D. Davison and Timmy Hill starting 39th and 40th. Those are the two guys that are starting towards at the back of the pack, and at $5,200 and $5,100, it doesn't take a lot for them to reach value. We've got them finishing at 30th and 28th respectively, and they're at 4 and 5x value. Mm-hmm. So these guys, if there's a couple accidents, if there's some cars that aren't able to have if they have some performance issues or technical issues or whatever the case may be, they'll get kicked to the back, and these guys automatically get a couple positions.
If this is a green flag race, these guys have no shot, no chance. But this is the NASCAR Cup Series, and when was the last time we saw a good, honest, like clean race? Very few and far between. So, like you said, you get a couple of these guys with some damage, guys up front that will kill your lineups if you have them in there. They drop back. All of a sudden, these guys move up a few positions. And like you said, if you're able to pick the rest of the guys around them because of the salary relief, you're sitting pretty.
Yeah, and it's not, those two guys aren't going to be ones that I have in every single lineup, but I want to have a good bit of exposure throughout my lineups to at least one of those guys. So, things that I'm interested about talking about is we've spent a lot of time on the race guide again. As always, we want to make sure that we're providing relative content to everybody that's viewing this. The driver spotlight is one of those things that we spend a little bit of time on to make sure that we're able to nail down. So, who do you feel is got the most ability to take this and get a checker flag and win this thing?
Well, if you take the randomness out of NASCAR, my two favorite plays are Chase Elliott to most likely win. It's a big surprise. But Truex is another guy, even with starting 19th. What we saw him do in the Clash, I don't think they're going to make that same mistake with the dirt, mud, whatever it was. That's night race. This is a day race. If it starts raining, all bets are off. I don't know what's going to happen. I probably hope I have all 100% Allmendinger or something like that. But for the most part, my favorite checkered guys are most likely to win. It would be Chase Elliott and Truex.
Yeah, and then we go over the green flag guys that we think are some solid value and some upside. We mentioned Eric Jones is one of those guys. Alex Bowman is the other. Alex Bowman, we've seen him have some success early, and we're looking for a lot coming from the rear of the field.
Yeah, if these guys were starting 15 spots higher, they probably wouldn't have made this position. But they're too talented. They have too much prior success to not account for what they have the potential to do in this race with their terrible starting position. So it will be difficult. They will probably be running some different pit strategies. But there's only 16 laps, I think, in the first two stages. Like each.
There's 16 and the 18.
So yeah, you can get into trouble and you can go a couple laps down, but it takes a while for the leader to catch you. I think they're going to be hitting pit road, into the stage. They'll pass enough guys to stay on the lead lap. They'll stay in contention. So they have to be our green flag this week. They offer too much upside and very little downside, even if they were to wreck out.
Speaking of downside, that gets us into the last two flags that are part of our driver spotlight, and that would be the yellow and the red flag. So yellow is somebody that we caution people to kind of stay away from, and then this week we're going with Austin Dillon. He's starting 10th. That's a big reason why. Also, he didn't get to run this race last year. You mentioned that earlier with Kaz Gralla running the race. That's a big reason why we went yellow.
Starting third. Yeah, he started last year.
That's right.
Kaz Gralla started 10th last year,
yeah.
But Austin Dillon starting third.
So there's even more of a reason why we wouldn't want to put ourselves in that kind of situation. Anything else you want to enlighten people to?
Well, the yellow flag, it's just meant to be a caution. It's the upside, the downside outweighs the upside. But that doesn't mean that he still can't be of value to your lineups. That's why I kind of was speaking a little positive of him earlier. It's like, he's who knows what's going to happen in this race. But with that starting position, that does offer him a lot of upside over, if the race is mostly cautioned, because it's always raining or something like that. But it's a tough play for me this week. I won't have too much Austin Dillon, but it's something you really need to really think about, see how your lineups construct.
Yeah, and then we get on to that final one. That's the red flag, which we say, hey, kind of stay away from. We've got Bubba Wallace there this week.
Yeah.
You want to kind of let people know why?
Well, the thing with Bubba Wallace is, let's see, in driver rating, he is 27th in driver rating in the last 5 races.
At road courses.
And he's starting 10th in this race. But he's in better equipment, so it is a little bit something you kind of think about, in my opinion, as well. But I don't see the upside there with Bubba Wallace, and more than likely, he's gonna finish further back than where he starts, and you don't want those guys in your lineup. He won't offer you the upside. He's not gonna lead a bunch of laps. He probably won't lead any laps. And if he gets a couple fastest laps, that would be kind of a surprise.
Yeah, and we saw Ty Dillon, even in the Clash, run the same setup that we're expecting to see this weekend. And Ty Dillon's an experienced road racer, and he was only able to put it into 18th position out of 21 cars. So,
well, he did get in. I think they had a little pit road issue or something like that. It was something kind of funky because he was running up there a little bit. But again, it wasn't anything where he was competing in the top 5 where you're like, you got to watch out for these guys. I think that the car will probably be a little bit better than what Ty Dillon had, being that was the first race they'd ever run as a team. But with Bubba Wallace behind the wheel, we got to see more from him from road course before he goes into that road course pool, in my opinion.
Yeah, you mentioned pools. We've got all of that stuff mentioned in our race guide. And something we spend a lot of time on throughout the week is preparing for this race, for this specific racetrack, and compile all that data into our race guide and make it available to you. We're doing that for a limited time, and it's going to eventually be Patreon only, but we want to get everybody exposed to it. There's a lot of information, and it's visual. So you're not just diving through spreadsheets and all that. So we're excited to bring you that driver spotlight in the race guide, along with a lot of other information.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Any last closing thoughts before we put a little cherry on top of this episode for this race?
I think NASCAR has done a great job with mixing things up this year, 2021, getting it started early with the road courses. Like we discussed a little bit earlier, there's 7 of them. Let's get the shows going with some really competitive road course action. Show what these drivers are made of, and show that they can do a lot more than just turn left.
Yeah, it's more wild card racing on the schedule is always fun. We may see another McDowell type guy, which we kind of didn't really allude to, but with that win, he's in the playoffs. He's locked in. So, Hamlin, Truex, Elliott crashed each other out last lap, and then someone else like Anthony Alfredo who did pit position. Someone like that. I mean, these road courses could lend to some unfamiliar names in the playoffs. So that's exciting. I can't wait for this race, especially if they start racing in the rain. I'm going to be watching both the truck and Xfinity races, seeing how things kind of play out. So I'm excited. I think this was a great episode. I hope everybody at home watching, I hope you enjoyed it as well. If you did, go ahead and give us a like. Subscribe if you want to be notified whenever we upload more videos. If you're listening on the audio, give us a follow on Spotify or iTunes or wherever else you may be listening.
And we want lots of comments. We want interaction. So if you can please leave a comment on wherever you're listening, we would love to be able to interact with you. Want to hear more from you so that we can engage on any topic that you want to. So you can find us on Twitter and Instagram at the DK Garage, and as well as the Patreon as well.
Yep. So with all that being said, good luck to your lineups. I can't wait to start building mine, and we wish you guys nothing but success. See you guys next week.